Yo, what's going on, everyone? Today we have everyone's favorite watermelon crusher, Hailey, or Bailey, or Hey Bay. I've been playing Hailey a lot since she came out, and fantastic character. I will have to say I think everyone is underutilizing Hailey quite substantially. Hailey is a burst damage sniper, and she focuses on putting a lot of damage down range very quickly, but then you have to sort of wait a little bit to do it again, and she locks herself into animations that she gets slapped in. So let's go over her passive, Safe Strategic Retreat. This increases weak point damage over a certain distance. 25 meters is the maximum that you get a weak point damage increase. So you'll see the range is 31 meters on the sniper rifle. If you're having an issue damage testing ranges, get a sniper rifle. The game says the max is 25 meters on weak point damage. That is 756. And that is 574, working as advertised. So since you should always maintain a distance of 25 meters or more, this would put her in the sniper rifle, scout rifle category. But this ability works differently than everyone thinks it does. We have 704,000. The 28 meters, we get 753,000 damage. That is an increase from Sharon. How could this be? We still get 539,000. If we go farther, we have a damage of 704,000 with Sharon, and then whenever we go to Hailey, we get a damage range of 500 to 750,000. This would indicate the 50% increase off the base that it denotes right here. And anything under the reference distance, the 12.5, is when you will be achieving minimum weak point damage on Hailey. Anything over that, you'll get slightly more. And then at 25 meters, you get a bonus to your damage. Granted, I think the bonus is around 8%, but it doesn't say that anywhere. I'll have to do more testing. So you get a very small damage bonus from, and anything under that far away, you get a damage decrease. This is one of the balancing tactics in Hailey's arsenal. Now we'll go over Hailey's first ability, Cryo Rounds. Cryo Rounds has 9 shots. The stack of flash freezing slows down your enemies, and the other stack of flash freezing on Colossus slows down Colossus is just less. You can have 9 stacks of cryo on an enemy, and each stack you hit with any firearm gives you 50% extra damage of that firearm's damage in damage. This promotes a lot of tools in Hailey's arsenals that no one is using. Everyone wants to just go melt the pyromancer in 9 seconds, or 3 seconds, or 2 seconds, which I'll show later. So now this enemy has 9 cryo stacks. If I take my perforator and I use a stack of it to hit it with weak point expansion, I do 3.4 million damage with bonus damage in white if you did not see it. This is one of the reasons Hailey is being underutilized. Hailey specializes in weapons that hit like a truck. Hailey is also one of the only descendants that crack with shotguns. Woof. Anyway, now if you'll notice, it says dimension on this ability. If I take my reactor and I swap it out for a chill dimension reactor, so sorry, you cannot build the way you're thinking about building. On another note on her first ability, you'll notice the range on my rangefinder at 39, and me trying to activate her first ability is not working. You'll notice my rangefinder on 38, and the ability working. That would put the range of her first ability at 38 meters exactly, cannot be altered by a range module. Her second ability, Storm Snare. Storm Snare puts you in this gigantic 4 to 5 second animation where the game wants to clap your cheeks. Each one of these squares is 5 meters, and you'll notice the cone is 5 meters wide. This also cannot be affected by range on your modules. There is a direct damage and an indirect damage. On a direct hit, you'll see that there are 5 stacks accumulated. On a direct hit and an indirect of 2 stacks. If you have an indirect hit, it basically does half the damage. And you'll see under that, there's a Chill Vortex. Chill Vortex is the melee range of this ability. The melee of Chill Vortex imposes 9 stacks, does no damage, however it does stagger enemies. This is just to get enemies off of Hailey because she does get climbed upon by the many things that want to climb upon her. So you will not get more than 10 meters. Next we have Cold Fury. Cold Fury is a buff that she imposes on herself at the cost of continuous mana drainage. It has an MP cost to activate and then an MP cost of every cycle for every 1 second. Each stack gives you 2.5% firearm critical hit rate and skill critical hit rate, as well as firearm penetration for having Cold Fury on, and then an additional 6 per stack. At 16 max stacks, that will give you a 40% skill critical hit rate and firearm critical hit rate, both applied to your base. If you will notice, the firearm crit rate of my Piercing Light unmodded is 40%, and my skill critical hit rate is 12% with mods. If I activate it, you will see both of these numbers climb dramatically per stacks. I will achieve a 100% skill critical hit rate and an 80% on the firearm critical hit rate. Both of these numbers are affected by modules on the gun and Hailey. Unfortunately, it decreases your movement speed per stack at a maximum of 40% movement speed. If you roll or use a grapple, you will lose 3 stacks. And at a maximum 16 stacks, you gain an additional 20% skill critical hit damage and firearm critical hit damage. This is extremely underutilized because you can easily acquire 100% critical hit rate on most firearms, and then when you stack it with weak point expansion, you get massive damage. That one shot did 5 million, and that was just on a weak point expansion perforator. Besides it sporting the coolest animation in any of the skills, it hits like a truck. This swaps from the weapon equipped to a unique weapon that uses the stats of the weapon equipped, with the exception of the fire rate. So here we have the stats of Piercing Light, and these will be the stats of her unique weapon. Piercing Light is the best weapon. Sorry, it's not really a competition for Hailey's 4. We can go into the math as to why. No matter how hard you try, Piercing Light will always come on top by a minimum of 6%, assuming the same builds, and a maximum of 13% if there is no modules. In order to look at a firearm's base attack with no modules, you can look at this sheet right here. You'll see underneath the DPS number is firearm attack 193. This would put Piercing Light's firearm attack base 193,437, and afterglows at 114,000. If you really want to get in the specifics, Piercing Light only has a 1.2 critical hit damage multiplier and a 2 weak point damage times its base critical hit damage of 1.2 times its weak point damage of 2 gives us 463,000. Then we have Afterglow with 114,000 times 2 times 1.8 gives us 410,000. Minus the 463,000 gives us a 52,000 total damage difference per bullet. So 52,000 divided by 410,000 gives us a 12.8% difference in damage. Regardless of how you swing it and the rolls and the modules, the Piercing Light will always come on top with a minimum 6% increase in damage and a maximum of 13% increase in damage. So Piercing Light is just better. Sorry for your loss. However, I do think that if you get a cracked out Afterglow reactor, screw it, use Afterglow. Or if you already have Afterglow built, screw it, use Afterglow. But how does the ability function? Every time you shoot the round, it does the damage of the gun, plus 50% of the firearm attack increase. So imagine all of those stats, but only the firearm attack gets the increase. That means Afterglow gets about a 60,000 increase, and piercing light gets about 100,000 increase. Then you multiply it times all of the multipliers. Still the same percentages though. The unique weapon sports 4 rounds in the base damage of the gun, and every time you shoot, you get an extra whopping additional damage on top, which is a skill power modifier. So if we go into our ultimate base and we shoot, we see many numbers pop up. It is very hard to control all of these numbers, so I will just tell you what they are. One is the base bullet of piercing light with a 50% increase. The second is the skill power modifier. Then we have extra from the toxic attack. And if we use the third ability, we will see an increase in damage at 16 stacks. And if we use the second ability and inflict cryo, we will see too many numbers to count. And that is because A, it's doing a lot of numbers to this guy, and B, it's piercing through a whole bunch of enemies. So we have three numbers. If you'll notice, one was crit, the other wasn't crit. The one that was crit was the firearm, the one that wasn't crit was the skill, and the third was the toxic on my roll. I'm not saying to put toxic on your roll, by the way. I just have it because I'm trying to re-roll it for a weak point. As much as I would like to move on from this, we have to go into how to build your piercing light, or your afterglow, or whatever gun you decide to pick. So here we have the illustrious piercing light. If you'll notice, I have 12% rounds per magazine on my gun. That is because the magazine increase the amount of rounds in your ultimate. We have 4 shots, so in order to get that 8th shot, we have to do a lot of work. At minimum, you will need these 2 modules if you want 8 shots, extra rounds. To get the rest, you need the 12% roll on your gun. It needs to be 12% if you want the 8th round. If you are willing to go for 6 rounds, that is fine. But if you're going to equip this, you need to go for 8 rounds, or you end up barely breaking even because of the weak point damage minus. So either go for 6 or go for 8. Don't go for 7. That being said, I am currently leveling out piercing light. I don't know why it's taking me so long to level up these weapons. I'm not purposely targeting weapons to level up. That's probably why. I will have to say there are 2 options for the gun: weak point expansion and special sight. Special sight is typically very bad because it decreases your movement speed, but it gives you a 30% whenever it's fully leveled up. And then weak point expansion will give you 140% weak point damage every 10 seconds. This will give you 30% damage for every bullet. So it really depends on what you're doing as to which one you want. If you are speedrunning, weak point expansion is better because you get the bonus on the first shot. If you are just running normally, special sight is better because you're locked in place anyway. Point detection will be stronger than adventure on the piercing light because you already have a 2 times weak point multiplier. So weak point expansion, focus fire, and weak point detection are what I'm going to put on my piercing light. However, build your piercing light how you want to. Now we can go into how to play Hailey. There are several ways to play Hailey. All I can tell you is that if someone is telling you to use the first ability to make a mobbing build, I would tell you to not do that for many reasons. The first reason, there is 0 chances ever that a Hailey first ability will ever compete with Freyna, Paessa, Valby, Noise Surge, Bunny, Glay, or even Ajax. There are many others. Hailey's first ability is not the ability for killing ads. Hailey's first ability is used for getting stacks. I will catch crap for saying that, but it is true. If you want an ad build, the best ad build for Hailey, mine isn't leveled up, so forgive me, is actually just going to be a Thunder Cage with this ability. Thunder Cage's critical hit rate at 28%. Now you will see Thunder Cage's critical rate at 84%. It can go much higher. The mods on my Thunder Cage are obviously awful because I haven't built it, but obviously this is the way to go. If I completely built, obviously you should pick an SMG because when Thunder Cage explodes, I would say the fully maxed out Thunder Cage on the third ability is going to do in excess of 4 to 5 times the amount of work. Same with Greg's, because it can do the same thing with Greg's Reversed Fate, as well as a multitude of other options. First tip, that's the first tip on Hailey. The second tip on Hailey, in order to maximize your killing potential for void intercepts and bosses alike, Piercing Light number 1, I would say the second gun you should have is probably the Perforator. And the third gun you should have is some sort of high fire rate gun. Mine is going to be Python, simply because I already have Python built for crit. This is my Python. I use it for Glay. That is why Mental Focus is on it. I would actually take that off for Firing Fiesta. So my Python on the third ability does 250,000 per shot. If I reload, this is absolutely disgusting. So, don't build Hailey for her first ability for mob clearing. Just get a Thunder Cage. Crack it out. The second tip, besides having Piercing Light as your main, a weak point expansion impact round as your second. Now, keep in mind, that is being subtracted. So if you actually wanted to, you could go with any of the other impact rounds, which if you have a Wave of Light or a Blue Beetle, it would be fine. A Scout Rifle on Hailey would be sick. But for the way I have built Hailey, for the upcoming section, if you want to put Shot Focus on the build, you can easily replace HP Amplification for Shot Focus, because they are the same module. First, we have this build. You're probably wondering why I pick Multi-Talented over Dangerous Assassin, and it is for her ultimate. So first, you will notice that I have 8 rounds in the magazine because of Piercing Light. So this is a typical damage cycle with Hailey on the build. You can replace some modules for more MP conservation.
Objective confirmed.
On the last round of the ultimate, you actually want to turn your cryo rounds off and then turn them back on again to proc Multi-Talented, so that your cooldown for the ultimate is so fast that you can just go back in it, and it times it perfectly to give you 16 stacks of cryo again. Then turn it off, turn it back on, and do it again. So you will notice that it says MP recovery from weak point attack 15%. Inside of the game, this is how you recharge your MP. You do not need MP recovery unless you're focusing on her third with some farming build, like I mentioned previously. Recharge your MP by being better at the game. If you're running out of MP, it might be a skill issue. I do run out of MP though. And then right before you turn off her ultimate, you want to turn on her third ability so that you get her fourth ability back immediately. This is why I run Multi-Talented. I can replace that with Dangerous Ambush for more damage, but I'm only going to do that if I'm speedrunning anyway. I don't really use her second ability, although her second ability is quite strong. If you max out the stack of the third ability,
Gently does it.
you'll see that number was 21 million damage. Hailey is absolutely insane, and they will probably be buffing every other Descendant because of how crazy Hailey came out. I honestly think that the future of the Descendants are all going to be about as strong as Lepic and Enzo and Glay. That is like the benchmark, I think, for the strength of the Descendants. And then they will give us very difficult gameplay to compensate for our buffs, which I'm for. I think it's going to be a good time. And then whenever I'm not bossing,
It's up to me.
I use a combination of the third ability and this. I don't need maximum stacks whenever I'm fighting some commander or whatever, so it doesn't matter. If you'll notice, I'm doing millions of damage with just my perforator right in their face, for which I have a 50% weak point decrease anyway. For this specific Hailey build, I would probably put accuracy somewhere on here instead. Really, if I wanted to get the biggest bang out of my buck here, I would go Scout Rifle right here. As far as the reactor, currently I have a Piercing Light mounted, additional attack on Colossus with a purple skill crit. This is what you want, although you would want 2 golds, but ow. That will give you the most damage against Colossuses. I have done much testing with many reactors. If you are going to go for damage on the first ability, obviously get a Dimension skill reactor, although just get a Thunder Cage, you'll have a better time. And then if you want to go anything that's not the second or fourth ability. So at first I thought I would need multiple reactors for multiple things. However, I only need 2, really. That is a singular power skill boost ratio with a skill critical hit damage. That will give me the best bang for my buck on almost all of my builds. So whenever I'm bossing with Colossi, I use this one. Whenever I'm not, I use the other one. Although if that chill skill was a singular, I would be doing more damage. With external components, I have 2 different builds. The Slayer set, which I use for this build right here. It's unfinished, but honestly, I don't need it to be finished because I can't really get too much more damage out of it. Although I generally dislike speed running solo bosses because honestly, it's very easy to kill these bosses solo. If you're interested in farming any of the bosses with the third setting, wait until the boss just appears, activate your third, crouch down into this form. Whenever he appears, activate your first ability, get cryo stacks. Don't miss your shots. I miss the third shot. And it is that easy. I got 6 seconds. I've gotten 3 seconds. You can get 3 seconds with this build. I've done it. I just don't want to sit here and try to give you the best runs for the best thing. I did miss a shot though. If you want faster clear times, get 16 stacks, and then as soon as the boss spawns, open up with your first ability, and then while the things are going, just shoot at him. But it doesn't matter anyway. The difference between 6 seconds and 3 seconds might be twice as fast, but it's also just 3 seconds. Oh. Meh. If you have a reactor with 2 gold stats, you can do 22 million damage to the Pyromancer. But once again, I don't like playing like that anyway. For my second build on Hailey, the one I actually use for anything that's not speedrunning, I actually use Polar Knight with an Annihilation Memory and a gold HP processor would be my ultimate component set with a 96% skill power modifier. But, oh yeah. And then this is the build I actually use. Spear and Shield for defense and skill power. Focus on Chill for skill cooldown. Nimble Fingers for skill cooldown. MP Conversion for cooldown. 2 HP mods. Skill Concentration, Front Lines, and Skill Insight. You do not need emergency measures to get your 100% skill critical hit rate. Although you can, if you want to be able to crit the bosses with critical hit resistance more often. If you want to put shot focus on the build, you can easily replace HP amplification for shot focus. Options for multi-talented, if you don't want to play that way, are of course Dangerous Ambush, and Preemptive Strike is actually pretty good on Hailey as well. You can also forego multi-talented entirely and put another focus on module for a slightly more damage increase. But this is my build and I'm sticking to it. I have a lot of fun with this and the cooldowns are crazy. If you are doing a farming set, which I would put 1 HP here, keep these modules on like this, 2 critical hit modules still, and then you're pretty much set, in my opinion. Just make sure that when you farm, you do it with a Thunder Cage or a Greg's and not the first ability. I'm playing Hailey. You enjoy Hailey how you want to, or any other Descendant. I hope this was insightful. Check out my channel if you like how I do content. Consider subscribing. I live stream on Twitch a lot. I have a schedule, but I stream outside of that schedule as well. In the description, have a sick day. Peace out.